delicious blend of shrimp and crisp vegetables stir-fried on the grill. All this under $4 for lunch, under $5 for dinner. Try the choice. All you care to eat smorgasbord. 1801 22nd Street.
This is WHO TV 13 Des Moines.
Good morning. Chicago Mayor Harold Washington has won that city's big Democratic primary. Amidst controversy and charges of an anti-Washington conspiracy, he handily defeated former Mayor Jane Byrne. As an overwhelming favorite, he'll now go on to face the Republican candidate Donald Hayter and 2 independents in a general election. Though he's being credited with 52% of the primary vote, Washington's exact margin of victory is still uncertain. As a result of various follow-ups, many of the votes are still being counted by hand today, Wednesday, February the 25th, 1987.
From NBC News, this is Today with Bryant, Gumbel, and Jane Pauley.
And good morning and welcome to Today on this last Wednesday of the month of February. Not since Richard J. Daley, as a mayor of Chicago, been re-elected, but that seems the direction that Harold Washington is headed this morning. He was the big victor in last night's primary. John Palmer is going to give us a little bit more on that vote and the controversies involved in just a little bit. And we'll be talking with the mayor himself in close-up at 7:09. And then later in this half hour, we'll try to preview the Tower Commission report on the Iranian arms deal and the expected White House reaction. We'll get to that in just about 15 minutes.
Also coming up, a report on the Grammy winners. Ice skating stars Scott Hamilton, Ty Babylonia, and Randy Gardner will be by. And as we complete our series on the animal people, we'll look at a man who loves grizzlies. And
a bit later, we'll have the first of a two-part interview with Isabella Rossellini. But first, let's move to the news desk. Start the morning with John Palmer. Good morning, John.
Brian, Jane, thanks. Good morning. The Tower Commission investigating the Iran-Contra affair has concluded that President Reagan, far from being remote from the administration's Iran arms dealings, was briefed on them regularly. The New York Times says the commission will show that Mr. Reagan frequently discussed the Iran initiative at morning meetings with his then National Security Advisor, Poindexter. More on the White House in this report from Andrea Mitchell.
Bracing for tomorrow's report from the Tower Commission, the president appeared to say that he does not remember when he approved arms sales to Iran, a key issue for the investigators.
But I'd like to ask one question of everybody. Everybody that can remember what they were doing on August 8th of 1985, raise your hand. I think it's possible to forget. Nobody's raised any hands.
The president was echoing a line used earlier by Chief of Staff Reagan. It was Reagan who persuaded the president to tell the Tower Board that he cannot remember approving the arms sale, matching Reagan's own testimony. Reagan's coaching angered many Reagan loyalists, including the First Lady. Earlier, the president had told the board he did approve the shipments, agreeing with the recollection of former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane. With reports that Oliver North's former secretary, Fawn Hall, helped him destroy and alter documents, investigators are looking at the possibility of a cover-up.
When testimony is changed, when documents are changed, when positions are changed, you have to say that it's more than just a failure of memory.
And sources have told NBC News that Chief of Staff Reagan is insisting on staying at least long enough to make sure that the president exonerates Reagan in his response to the Tower Board's report. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at the White House.
Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, in a Moscow speech this morning, warned there will be grave consequences if his policy of Soviet democratic reform fails. He said those who fear that his policies will lead to too much democracy and a disorientation of society do not, he says, know the Soviet people. Well, today is a public holiday in the Philippines, marking the first anniversary of the revolution that brought Corazon Aquino into office. Keith Miller has a report now from Manila.
Not since the revolution a year ago have so many people gathered in the same place to share the same sentiment. People's power and the popularity of President Corazon Aquino remains a force in a country uncertain about its future. Aquino today saluted the military's participation in the revolution, but demanded its allegiance.
Our people turned out to defend your lives. It is your part now to defend their freedom.
The overthrow of Marcos is now a part of Philippine culture in film and music. But it has not solved the nation's economic and political problems. The scavengers in Manila did not take part in today's national holiday. They can't afford to, 7 out of 10 Filipinos know of nothing but poverty. And communist insurgents have ignored Aquino's call for peace. They are considered more dangerous than ever.
Within the next 6 to 12 months, the insurgency problem, especially the communist insurgency problem, will be very serious, and it will threaten even the existence of government.
The appearance of stability can be deceiving. The armed forces are on alert today against threats to disrupt the celebration. A ceremony the government hopes will renew the spirit of change that helped install a democracy where only a dictatorship ruled before. Keith Miller, NBC News, Manila.
In this country, the launch of a $40 million rocket with a $55 million payload is set for early this evening from Cape Canaveral. Dan Molina has the story.
The announcements from this launch pad have had a familiar ring. First, the unmanned Delta rocket was go for launch. Then there was a delay. Now it's go again. All the while, the nation's weather forecasters can only look on and hope it all finally works. This weather satellite is on board the Delta. It's a critical replacement for one that failed while on orbit, one of 2 used to forecast severe storms. Last year, there was an identical attempt to get the replacement satellite into orbit. This was the launch, and this is what happened.
First 6 solids have been jettisoned.
Now in space, the one remaining satellite for tracking severe storms has also developed problems and is expected to eventually fail.
With only one satellite up there, many of us out in the forecasting field were a little bit nervous about how long that other one was going to last.
We've been limited, for example, in terms of early detection of hurricanes as they form.
Hurricanes and tornadoes would become much more difficult to track if this launch should fail. Backup military satellites would have to be pressed into service. The result on TV newscasts would not be a complete loss of satellite images, but over time, less area would be tracked, and it'd probably take longer to detect storms. Generally, Delta rockets are reliable. One has been launched since the explosion last May, and it had no problems. Dan Molina, NBC News, Cape Canaveral.
7-year-old Ronnie DeSiller, whose plight prompted nationwide attention when $4,000 that had been collected for a liver transplant was stolen, successfully underwent that transplant operation this morning. People from all across the nation donated several $100,000 to pay for the transplant at a Pittsburgh hospital, and doctors say he's doing just fine. 7:30 now after the hour. Back to Bryant.
Well, John, you made it back from the party last night in Washington. Jane did too. Certainly I made it back.
Who didn't make it back?
We all got in very late. Some of us decided to stay down there. Good morning, Willard.
Somebody had to do the dishes, Brian.
Yeah.
I had to clean up, and I cleaned up. Hey, that was a lovely, lovely party. Mr. Wright and all the gang. Mr. Wright, the right man has finally come along, and Mr. Grossman. The star of the show, I think, Bryant, was Tip O'Neill, don't you?
It was lovely to see him there. It really was.
He had more fun. It is a party when he shows up.
Never seen him have a bad time.
No, I think he has a great time. Everybody did. It was a lovely party. The old Willard Hotel knocked themselves out. Got to mention one of my idols here in Washington. We talk about the White Tavern, or White Castle all the time. These are sliders that they make here in Washington for 60 years. These are little tavern hamburgers, and they're fantastic. Used to buy them for a nickel a piece. I remember we used to go to Glendale Amusement Park. I'd take the streetcar and I'd eat 14 of them. Back in those days, I knew how to really pack it away. Short night, but a merry one. Let's check the act. Let's hope the satellite makes it. We need that weather satellite up there. Should be a good night for it, although there's a lot of rain down in Florida this morning. Big story again is that snowstorm. How about that, boys and girls? Flagstaff, Arizona, 2 feet of snow. That is a lot of snow up near the San Francisco peaks. Lander, Wyoming got 26. Williams, Arizona got 35 inches of snow. Ely, Nevada this morning is 5 degrees. That's a little bit on the cool side. But that snowstorm continues out in the western states with watches and warnings and travelers advisories for the northern, central, and southern Rockies, the Great Basin, the Central Plains, the Northern Plains. Heaviest amounts will be in the Central and Southern Plains, where they could get an additional 2 feet of snow. Heavy rains in San Diego again today. They've had some southern southwestern showers for the last 2 days, and more expected in the southwest. Heavy rains throughout the southern plain states as well. Dallas is going to get some heavy rains today. Tropical moisture, typical springtime stuff, and heavy showers in east and central Texas. A lot of fog along the Gulf Coast and the southeast generally, back down through southern Florida, rainy and showery throughout the day. Our pick city is Hilo, Hawaii. Beautiful weather today. Couldn't be better. Here's what's happening in your world this morning.
In our world today, partly cloudy to cloudy skies, southeasterly winds 10 to 20, and highs here in Des Moines of 47. With your morning weather, I'm meteorologist Tom Atkins.
From your nation's capital, Ray Armstrong at Hartford City in Indiana, a very sincere. There's Raymond right there. Happy birthday. Good-looking man at 100 today. Now back to New York and Mr. Gumbel, the other star of the show.
All right, Willard, thank you. 7:10 now, and on Close-Up this morning, Harold Washington. As we've been reporting, he's the winner of Tuesday's Democratic primary for mayor of Chicago, and traditionally that winner goes on to victory in the general election. The mayor joins us this morning from Chicago, and good morning, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations.
Good morning to you. I feel very good this morning.
You should. Does your victory mean reform has finally taken hold in Chicago, or was this simply a case of your ability to generate your supporters much greater than Jane Byrne did?
No, it's another benchmark in the road toward reform. Yes, we think it's taken hold very strongly. And I don't think this is necessarily a barometer or a test of it, because it is pretty clear that the majority of the people of the city of Chicago agree with our programs by all kinds of tests.
You say a majority of the people agree with your programs, and yet our numbers show that 98% of the blacks who voted for you, and 73% of the whites who voted for Jane Byrne. Doesn't that suggest some continuing serious racial differences?
It suggests a majority, which I got. When you want to break it down into its component parts, yes, I suppose it does mean more work has to be done on both sides toward bringing our two great peoples together, plus the third component, the Hispanic vote. I don't think it means divisiveness. I think people simply have to get different mindsets in terms of reform, in terms of race, in terms of a lot of things. Chicago's a growing, powerful, strong community. It's got a lot to say. It's got a lot of growing up to do, and that's just part of it. This is part of it.
Well, let's look at it from the positive side. Race was not the issue it was 4 years ago, despite the fact that it was an issue in this campaign. What changed most from 4 years ago, you or the city?
No, I think people got acclimated to a different kind of mayor, not just in terms of philosophy, but in terms of race. And those things take some getting used to, I suppose. But we didn't appear to be, or we didn't prove to be the ogre that we were painted by some people. As a matter of fact, just the opposite. We were rather grandfatherly. Some people say avuncular, but whatever. We weren't the ogre that they said that we were.
And yet, you know as well as I do that Chicago's image continues to be a city that is plagued by political infighting. Does your primary victory suggest that maybe that kind of rancor is going to be coming to an end gradually over the next 4 years?
I think so. I don't think people will tolerate that kind of bitterness any longer. Controversy, yes. Spirited, yes. Even raucous. But in terms of divisiveness based on race, I don't think the majority of the people of the city of Chicago want it, and I don't think they're going to tolerate it. There were occasions, of course, when it skirted to the edge, but it didn't go over, I don't think. But I think Chicago is in the process of growing, like other cities are in the process of growing. Race relationships should be the, shall I say, the topic of the future. Not racism, but race relationships. And I think Chicago is got its out front and is working with it. Like other major cities who've had black mayors or female mayors, for that matter.
Let me turn to some of the controversies involved, because this morning's results, though no one debates that you're the winner, are riddled with controversy. Some voters got third-party ballots instead of Democratic ballots. Some polling places didn't have the right materials. Some polling places had to extend voting hours. Do you think there was a conspiracy against you?
Well, I think reform hasn't yet seeped into the Board of Election Commissioners. I guarantee you we'll give it a good shot of it pretty soon. No, it's antediluvian. It's dated. The gentleman who runs it seems to think he has a dynasty rather than being appointed to the position. But it needs some growing up, too. It needs some looking at. And I think this election focused on that Board of Election Commissioners so strongly that reforming it's not going to be a very difficult problem in the future. Court surveillance of it is required. Citizen constant surveillance of it is required. And now I think the press can no longer escape the fact that it is not too well run.
Is the pressure still on you, or is April going to be kind of a pro forma affair, the general election?
All elections are tough, and during Chicago's, shall we say, re-incubative stages, the elections are going to be tough. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of dealing with things. Reform hasn't come easy, but it's come, and we're going to have another good spirited controversy, but we'll prevail because what we're doing is appealing to people.
One final note, Mr. Mayor. Is Jane Byrne finished?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I think it's a hump she's gotten over or ran into, whichever you want to put it, but no, she's not finished in the sense that she is beyond any usefulness to our city. I certainly would want to utilize her talents. I think she's a somewhat engaging lady with a lot of feistiness.
Mayor Harold Washington, diplomatic in victory. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll come back in just a moment and preview the Tower Commission report and the expected White House reaction after we take a break. This is Today on NBC.
Vogue Vision Centers announce our half-price sale. Now you can get the latest fashion frames and first-quality lenses at half price. Frames like Andromeda by Avant-Garde, floating lenses encircled by gold, half price. Nordics Berkeley in 17 fashion colors, half price. For that distinguished look, a pair of City frames by Carlo Alberto at half price. Or spoil yourself in a pair of Zeiss frames, handmade with silicone pads, half price. Hurry into any of our 6 locations and get the best at half price.
Oh, my. You look awful. Did you call your doctor? You don't have one. What now? Wow, look at all those names. There's an easier way. Iowa Methodist Medical Center has a special free service for people who don't have a doctor, the Physician Finder. Just call this number and Iowa Methodist will find a doctor for you. They'll even arrange your first appointment. Don't you wish you called Iowa Methodist a long time ago? The best time to find a doctor is before you need one.
Ours, as you know, is not a perfect world. May I? That's why it's so refreshing when something really perfect comes along. Like Diet Coke. Tastes great straight or on the rocks. Yet it's just 1 calorie. That's why Diet Coke is the perfect soft drink. For an imperfect world.
Just for the taste of it. Diet Coke.
We're late for the meeting. My car or yours?
Yours. Whose car is this? Ours. Is that your car? Uh-oh, better get Mako.
Mako's state-of-the-art auto painting and body repair. High-tech, low prices keep Mako on top.
Step right in, little lady.
Okay. If they're saying uh-oh, better get Mako.
As we've been reporting, the Tower Commission report on the Iran-Contra aid scandal is due out tomorrow, but already leaks from the document allege President Reagan took part in many Iran meetings but didn't remember what took place. For some idea of what Capitol insiders are saying about these revelations, we go now to our Washington newsroom, where Lou Cannon, White House correspondent for the Washington Post, and David Gergen, former communications director and current editor of U.S. News and World Report, join us. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Mr. Gergen, this not remembering, is that consistent with the president you worked for up until, what, 3 years ago?
Well, it is consistent in the sense that he is not a detail man, but I think the one thing we have to remember in all of this, while I think there's a lot of damage that's being suffered at the White House, it's not that the president doesn't remember approving the sale. The question is on what date he approved the sale. Frequently, it's often assumed he just doesn't even remember anything about it. I think what's at issue is what date it was actually approved.
Ms. Cannon, what do you think is at issue here?
Well, I think it's a little bigger issue than that, because the question is whether he remembers approving the sale before it was made, as Mr. McFarlane, his former national security advisor, testified, and as Reagan testified when he first met with the Tower Board, or whether he remembers or whether he approved it after the sale, which is what Don Regan, his embattled White House chief of staff, says. Now, after meeting with Mr. Regan, the president changed his story. Now he switched it back again and said, honestly, he has no recollection, and that his recollection may have been refreshed by others, meaning Don Regan.
So who's confused?
Well, I think the president is honestly confused. I will tell you that when this president says he doesn't remember something, he's got a high amount of credibility with me. But I think it's fairly disgraceful when a president of the United States is sort of led around by the nose by his chief of staff, who seems to be more interested in having the president agree with his own testimony and recollection than he does in saying what he knows to the Tower Board.
Mr. Gergen, this feud has been reliably reported going on at the White House between the Chief of Staff, Donald Regan, and the First Lady. It implies almost that the president is a bystander in his own house. Is that a fair conclusion to draw?
Well, I think that's certainly the conclusion that the White House staff has led us into, and I think that on that score they have acted reprehensibly. It's just incredible to me that one of the first rules of behavior for any staff is not to insult the First Lady and not to put the President of the United States in a position where he looks like he's having to choose between his best friend, his Chief of Staff, and his wife. And I think it's just incredible that this has been allowed to happen.
Well, Don Regan is staying at least until the Tower Commission report comes out. Does he think that he is still useful to the President?
I think the reasons that Mr. Regan is staying have a lot more to do with his own personal reputation and in trying to escape with a graceful exit than a real service to the President. The fact is, I think that the real opportunity for a graceful departure came late last year. He didn't choose to take that, and now he's under incredible pressure. He really has become the lightning rod for all the criticism.
Well, if he's the lightning rod, isn't he doing the President a favor and drawing the heat?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think when you get into this posture, when an entire administration appears to be collapsing, when the American people, as in the Los Angeles Times poll today, think it's the President has lost control, that's doing the President no favors.
He's made the President look like a fool, Jane. He's been fighting for 3 months to save his own job rather than to save the President, whom he supposedly works for.
How long does the President have to get things back on track before irreparable damage has occurred?
I think the time frame is very short. What they're saying at the White House, and which I believe is they've got maybe at most a month, because in April, the congressional committee hearings on this are going to start. As the year goes on, it's going to get more and more partisan. He's going to have to come right out after the Tower Board, show that he's willing to clean up the mess and that he's willing to take his agenda to the country, or else I think his administration is finished.
I need a quick prediction from both of you, a headline. What's the headline from the Tower Commission report tomorrow afternoon going to be?
The headline is going to be that the President didn't know what was going on, that he didn't have his hand on the tiller, and that the White House and the NSC was a mess.
Ms. Gergen?
A massive mismanagement and abuse of policy.
All right, well, we'll see. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us from Washington this morning. Coming up on 22 after the hour, this is Today on NBC.
An emergency sale message from World Radio.
Hello, I'm Juan Roque, General Manager of World Radio, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. Business is tough, sales are not great, and as a result, inventory is way too high. This is not a problem, this is an emergency, and I'm going to deal with it the best way I know, by cutting prices.